Life shows us who we really are in a funny way. If I had been told 2 years ago that I would be where I am now, successful, independent, and completely estranged from my family, I would have laughed in disbelief. But here I am, and it's a pretty interesting story. My name is Federica Corelli, and then I worked as a manager of a medium-sized trading company. I was good at my job, but like many women in their late 20s, I began to feel the pressure of society, which forced me to settle down. I had a decent career and a small circle of close friends. My family consisted of my parents, with whom I was close at the time, and my older brother Leon. He was 2 years older and always remained the golden child of the family. Leon and I grew up together in the Boston suburbs, sharing the typical sibling rivalry, but at the same time maintaining, as it seemed to me, a strong relationship. He was always more sociable, the soul of the company, while I focused on my career and building a stable future. My parents did everything possible for him, and I learned to take it for granted. Those were the roles in our family. And then everything changed. It happened at a housewarming party at a mutual acquaintance's place, one of those gatherings where friends of friends chat over a glass of cheap wine and sliced cheese from the supermarket. That's where I met Maurizio. He was charming with that reserved manner that creeps up on you unnoticed. Dark brown hair fell over his forehead, and a slightly mocking smile made it seem as if he knew some kind of personal joke, accessible only to him. We started talking about podcasts, and it turned out that we have the same strange tastes. The conversation dragged on, and before I noticed, 3 hours had passed. We exchanged numbers, and soon the correspondence became daily. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in the city center. We talked for so long that the waiter started casting meaningful glances, hinting that it was time to leave. The second date turned into a third, then a fourth. Before I realized it, we were spending the whole weekend together. Maurizio was different from the other men I dated. He was more mature, more focused on the future. After 6 months of our relationship, we started talking about moving in together. He worked in software sales, had a stable income, and our views on life coincided. We both valued stability and were able to save money. On our first anniversary, Maurizio took me to the same Italian restaurant where our first date took place. I noticed that he was nervous. He checked his phone too often, fiddled with a glass of water in his hands. When dessert arrived, he suddenly got up, dropping to one knee next to the table, and took out a small velvet box. My heart was pounding so hard that I could barely hear my own voice when I said, "Yes." The ring was perfect, simple but elegant. Exactly the kind I would have chosen myself. There was applause in the hall, and someone shouted congratulations. I felt like I was floating in the air. The following weekend, I decided it was time to introduce him to my family. I was nervous. Parents could be quite judgmental, but Leon had a special gift. He either made people feel welcome or made things awkward. There was no average. When we reached our parents' house, Mom opened the door, not even letting us reach the porch. Her face lit up with a smile, but there was a faint shadow of doubt in her eyes. "Federica, dear," she exclaimed, wrapping me in a quick but firm hug. Then her gaze fell on Maurizio. "And you must be Maurizio," he introduced himself with a slight smile, holding out his hand. Mom hesitated for a moment, but then she returned the handshake. Her slender fingers lightly squeezed his palm, not just a greeting, but a gesture of appreciation. She's always been an instant reader of people, and I knew that her thoughts were working faster than she was letting on. Come in, come in." We entered the living room. My father was sitting in his favorite armchair, with a glass of wine in his hand. When he saw us, he slowly put his glass on the coffee table and stood up. "Dad, this is Maurizio, my fiancé," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. My father looked at us in silence. He had never been a man who gave greetings for no reason, and the moment dragged on. "Pleased to meet you," he finally said, but didn't extend his hand to shake. Maurizio showed no sign of embarrassment. He just nodded slightly and smiled. "Nice to meet you, too, Mr. Corelli." At that moment, a voice rang out. "Wow, our Federica has finally decided to tie the knot." Leon. He entered the room with his trademark cocky smile and clapped Maurizio on the shoulder as if they were old friends. I noticed a slight tension in Mauricio's posture, but he managed it. "Leon," I said with slight irritation, but my brother had already turned to me. "Relax, sis. We're just getting to know each other." I knew that tone. Friendliness on the verge of ridicule, always with a touch of superiority. Mom squeezed my fingers quickly, as if she wanted to calm me down. "Let's sit down at the table. I've made your favorite dish, Federica," she said, dismissively. We went into the dining room. I was hoping that dinner would go smoothly. But inside, everything was shrinking from the premonition that something would go wrong. The dinner was cozy and almost homely. Mom did her best. The table was set with all her love of tradition: porcelain dishes, linen napkins, a bottle of red wine, which my father took out of his secret stock. The aroma of fresh bread, basil, and tomato sauce was in the air. Her signature lasagna was always the best way to create a family atmosphere. Maurizio felt confident, although I noticed that he occasionally adjusted the cuffs of his shirt, his only sign of excitement. His mother casually asked him about his family, traditions, and food, and his father, as expected, immediately moved on to more serious matters. "So, Maurizio, what do you do?" "What is it?" he asked, cutting off a piece of lasagna and looking at it carefully, as if assessing him not only as a potential son-in-law, but also as a business partner. "I work in software sales," Maurizio replied calmly. "Now I mainly deal with corporate clients, helping companies find the best automation solutions." The father nodded, continuing to eat, but it was clear from his face that he was satisfied with the answer. "What are your plans for the future?" he persisted. "Federica and I want to save up for our own place," Maurizio replied, giving me a brief look that was so warm that it took my breath away. "It's a good thing," my father nodded approvingly. Meanwhile, Leon, who had been silent up to this point, suddenly became animated. "Wait a minute, are you a Juventus fan, by any chance?" "What is it?" he asked, narrowing his eyes, as if his attitude towards Maurizio depended on the answer. "Of course, Juventus. I've been rooting for them since I was a kid." Maurizio smiled. Leon happily slammed his palm on the table. "Well, finally. I've been dreaming about my brother all my life, but instead I got this one." He pointed his fork at me, grinning. I rolled my eyes. "You wouldn't have survived without me," I replied, taking a glass of wine. "How many times did I cover for you in front of your parents in high school?" "Oh, it's true," he laughed. The table was filled with laughter. I felt the tension that had been haunting me since the morning subside. Everything was going just perfectly. After dinner, when Mom started clearing the table, she suddenly perked up. "Oh, Maurizio, you haven't seen what Federica was like when she was a child." I froze. "Mom, no." "Oh, wait, I have wonderful albums." She ignored my protests and disappeared into the hallway. "Oh, this is going to be interesting," Maurizio said with a smile, leaning towards me. I sighed heavily. Mom returned with a couple of thick albums and enthusiastically laid them out on the coffee table. Maurizio sat next to him, and Leon joined him with a glass of wine, clearly looking forward to the fun. "Oh, this is a classic." Mom showed a photo of me, 5 years old, in a bright yellow dress and with huge bows, proudly holding a teddy bear. "And this is her first bike ride," she added, turning the page. Maurizio looked at me and laughed. I was lying in the dust next to an overturned bicycle, with disheveled hair and the most unhappy face in the world. "So that's why you're always so stubborn," he teased. I hid my face in my hands. "I'm leaving if you open another page." But they weren't listening. Leon turned the pages laughing, Mom commented on each photo, and Maurizio looked fascinated. I stole a glance at him. He was laughing. He really liked seeing this part of my life, my family. I felt something warm inside. Over the next few months, our lives turned into a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Mom took full responsibility for the flower arrangements. Her enthusiasm knew no bounds. She spent hours flipping through catalogs, discussing the shades of roses and lilies, and went to flower shops in search of the perfect bouquet. Sometimes I caught myself thinking that she was enjoying it much more than I was, but it was nice to see her so happy. Dad, a practical man, focused on negotiating the wedding venue. He studied contracts, checked estimates, called the owners of the sites and sought the best conditions, as if he had concluded an important deal. And Leon, well, Leon appointed himself the unofficial organizer of Mauricio's bachelor party. He literally took my fiancé under his wing, saying that his duty was to prepare Maurizio for family life properly. They started meeting regularly on Fridays for a beer, discussing football, work and, as it seemed to me, everything in the world. I was excited, but secretly glad. Seeing my brother and my future husband become close friends was important to me. Time flew by imperceptibly, and now the wedding day has arrived. We decided to hold the ceremony in the backyard of my parents' house. It was a modest but incredibly cozy celebration. Garlands of twinkling lights were hung on the branches of the trees, creating a soft, warm light. There were glass jars filled with wildflowers on the tables, and the scent of freshly cut grass and summer hung in the air. We were surrounded only by the closest people. Leon stood next to Maurizio, whispering something in his ear from time to time, which made him smile faintly. Mom was having a hard time holding back tears, and Dad was holding her hand, pretending that he just had something in his eye. When Maurizio kissed me after our vows, I really believed that this was my happiness. After our honeymoon, we moved into Mauricio's rented apartment, a cozy studio apartment in a decent neighborhood. It wasn't perfect, but we thought of it as temporary housing. That's when we decided to start our savings plan. It was our common goal to save up for the down payment on the house. To make the process more interesting, we turned it into a small competition. Each of us opened a separate account where we deposited money, and we agreed not to disclose the amounts until we were ready to purchase. It was fun at first. We enthusiastically compared the takeaway menu, choosing the best deals. Instead of dining in restaurants, we cooked at home, trying to come up with delicious dishes so as not to feel deprived. We even gave up going to the cinema, arranging movie screenings at home with popcorn and wine. But after about 3 months, Maurizio started to worry. "We're already turning into an old married couple," he complained one evening, idly turning the pages of a magazine. "We're too young to live like hermits." I tried to remind him of our goals, showed him how much we had already saved. "Think about it," I said, swiping my finger across the phone screen, where the amount in my account was displayed. "In a few years we will have our own place. Isn't it worth it?" He nodded and seemed to understand, but then Leon started inviting him to Friday meetings with friends. I was worried at first, but Leon assured me that he would look after Maurizio. "Relax, sis," he said with a smile. "I'm not going to take your husband on a spree. A little beer and talking about life didn't hurt anyone." I believed him. After all, who can I trust in my husband's matters if not my own brother? Moreover, Maurizio always returned home in a better mood. He was more affectionate, attentive, and even seemed more inspired by our savings plan. I've learned to accept these Friday nights as a part of our lives. Moreover, I even started waiting for them, because they gave me the opportunity to be alone with myself. A year after the wedding, I was pleased with our progress. I had just over $30,000 in my savings account. It was a sum that I was proud of. I didn't know how much Maurizio had saved up. We did not violate the rules of our competition, keeping the secret until the final moment. But I hoped he was doing as well as I was. It was Thursday evening when Maurizio suddenly announced at dinner, "Leon and I are thinking of going fishing this weekend. His friend has a lake house, so why not?" I looked up from my plate of pasta, surprised. "This weekend?" I asked again. "I thought we could finally spend time together. You've been working late all week." Maurizio grinned, and there was that special twinkle in his eyes that I knew so well. "Come on, Federica," he drawled with a sly smile. "I haven't fished in ages. It's going to be fun, just us guys, a few beers. Maybe we'll catch something worth bragging about." I didn't have time to answer, as there was a knock on the door, and then it just swung open. Leon didn't even bother to wait, using his key, which I once stupidly gave him in case of emergencies. Lately, I've been starting to doubt that this was a good decision. "Little sister," he exclaimed, spreading his arms as if he hadn't seen me in years. Then, with theatrical drama, he knelt down in front of my chair, clasping his hands in a pleading gesture. "Please, please, please let your wonderful husband go fishing with me this weekend. I promise, no wild parties, no crazy stunts. Just two guys trying to outsmart a couple of stupid fish." I rolled my eyes, but despite myself, I laughed. "Get up, you idiot. You're 40, not 4. Leon looked at me intently with his best, puppy dog eyes, the same look that saved him from countless troubles as a child. I sighed. "Good. But if you drown my husband, I will demand compensation." "That's nice." He clapped Maurizio on the shoulder. "Saturday morning, buddy, load up the gear and let's go on an adventure." They left early on Saturday morning, loading the car with fishing gear and a cooler bag full of supplies. I stood at the window, watching Leon talk animatedly to Maurizio, who laughs and nods in response, then slams the car door and they drive away. I spent the morning cleaning the apartment, just to keep myself busy. But by noon, I got bored, and I began to nervously walk around the rooms, feeling the emptiness in the air. And then I had an idea. Over the past year, I'd become good friends with Leon's girlfriend, Sarah. She was smart, funny, and most importantly, she really made my brother happy. Maybe she's bored too. I grabbed my phone and quickly dialed her number. Sarah answered on the third ring. "Hi, Sarah, it's Federica," I said cheerfully. "Listen, the boys are out fishing, so I was wondering if you'd like to go shopping. Can we have lunch somewhere?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Fishing? What is it?" she asked. "Well, yes, Maurizio and Leon left this morning. They were going to spend the weekend by the lake." Silence again, but this time intense. "Federica," Sarah began cautiously. "Leon doesn't fish. He's here, at my place. We were going to visit my parents for the weekend. He's in the next room right now." Something clicked in my head. My blood froze. In the background, I suddenly clearly heard my brother's voice. "It's just my friend Lucy," Sarah replied, and her voice was slightly muffled, as if she was trying to get away from Leon. I was sitting with the phone pressed to my ear, but my ears were already ringing. My husband. My brother. Both of them lied to me. But why? Where did Maurizio really go? My throat is dry. "Sarah," I whispered, feeling a chill creep into my heart. "Please don't tell Leon about this call. I need to figure something out. Just please." "Of course," she replied immediately. "Are you all right?" I did not know. "I'll call you later." I disconnected the call before my voice could break. I just sat on the bed for a few minutes, staring into space. My thoughts were racing erratically, images flashing on and off, Maurizio smiling at me across the table, Leon hugging his shoulders, promises, plans, Friday nights. I took a deep breath. Then she exhaled slowly. In the corner of the room, Mauricio's laptop hummed softly, left in sleep mode on his desktop. We have always been open with each other about passwords. Or at least that's what I thought. I walked over and carefully put my fingers on the keyboard. The screen came to life, and the password entry window lit up. I knew that Maurizio was not creative in this matter. His mother's date of birth. I tried to tease her about it. You're too predictable. You need better security. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could feel something heavy rising inside me. There's only one way to find out the truth. Now that Mauricio's predictability was working in my favor, my fingers trembled as I typed in the password. The screen blinked, and the laptop came to life. Maurizio has always been careless about such things. His social media accounts remained logged in, as if he didn't even think it would ever occur to me to check them. I opened the messages. And then I saw her name. Rebecca. The flood of messages was huge, going on for months. I started scrolling through them, feeling something icy rise from my stomach to my throat. I can't wait to see you this weekend, baby. Did your wife really believe the phishing story? Yes, my brother-in-law is covering for me. He's a legend. Haha. She's so clueless. It must be nice to have such a trusting wife. I felt the air coming out of my lungs, as if someone had just knocked me out from the inside. They met almost every weekend. Hotels. Her apartment. Even weekend trips disguised as work conferences or men's outings. Every message is a nail in the lid of my trust. The level of detail, the everyday brutality of their jokes about me, it wasn't just a hoax. It was betrayal with a smirk. I kept reading, even when the tears started to burn my eyes. Intimate photos they exchanged. Plans for new meetings. But the worst was yet to come. There was a separate message thread. With Leon. My brother. My protector. My best friend since childhood. I froze when I saw the latest messages. She totally bought it again, Maurizio wrote just a day ago. Your sister is as trusting as ever, huh? Leon replied. Do you remember when we were kids and I convinced her that ice cream grows on trees? She never got smarter. I clenched my fists. You're the best wingman ever, bro. Rebecca says hello to you. By the way, he says thanks for covering for Sarah. Too. Anytime. What a brother wouldn't do for a brother. Besides, it's a lot more fun than actually hanging out with my boring sister. Text me when you get back. Those girls from the strip club have been asking about us since last month. The messages went on and on. Plans for their bachelor parties. Detailed reports on their trips to strip clubs. Not only was Leon covering up Mauricio's affair, but he was also leading a lifestyle that would destroy Sarah if she ever found out. I read how they laughed at my careful savings plans, how they ridiculed my dream of owning my own house. She's probably going to pay for everything anyway. She's a real loser with that approach. But the worst part was that my brother, the man who once held my hand as a child when I was falling, the man who hugged me in tears at the wedding, the man who supported me during my father's illness, called me stupid. Naive. Boring. The room spun. I got up, staggered, and ran to the bathroom. I threw up. I gasped, holding onto the cold edge of the sink, trying to come to my senses. My body was shaking, but everything inside was strangely empty. When I was finally able to move again, I went back to my laptop. With methodical precision, I forwarded each incriminating message to my email address. Every cruel joke. Every planned deception. Every proof of their betrayal. I spent Saturday night in a strange, calm state of rage. I methodically looked through the rental ads. I made calls. By Sunday morning, I had already signed the contract and transferred the deposit for a furnished studio apartment on the other side of the city. I didn't cry. It seemed to me that I had exhausted all the tears. Maurizio returned home around 3 in the afternoon. He looked happy, his face was flushed. He was carrying a bag of frozen fish in his arms, a pathetic attempt to keep his lie alive. "Hey, baby," he shouted cheerfully from the doorway. "You should have seen the ones who got away." I was sitting at the kitchen table. My laptop was open in front of me. Without saying a word, I turned the screen towards him. On the screen was his conversation with Rebecca, including their rendezvous plans for this weekend. "You know what's funny?" I said, and my voice was too calm, as if it didn't belong to me. "I actually expected you to at least try to apologize." Maurizio straightened up, and his expression hardened. "And why?" I blinked, but didn't say anything. He continued with a shrug, as if it was nothing. "Do you want to know the truth? You've become boring, Federica. All you care about is saving money and planning for the future. Where's the fun? Where's the excitement?" I could feel the rage rising in me, but I held myself in check. "Even Leon says," he began, but I interrupted him, in a voice as cold as ice. "Even Leon?" I leaned forward, glaring at him. "Are you saying that even Leon thinks I'm stupid? Naive? Such a loser that I believe in the honesty of my husband and brother over and over again?" His face twitched, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Look, maybe it's for the best. We obviously want different things." "You're right," I said, standing up. His eyes widened as I reached for the suitcase I put behind the couch. "I wanted a marriage. You wanted convenience." Maurizio was silent, and I zipped up my bag and headed for the door. "I'm filing for divorce," I said without turning around. "Don't worry about your precious savings. You can keep them for yourself. Although I doubt there's anything left after all those strip clubs and hotels." I left, closing the door behind me, and this time I really didn't look back. I spent the whole day moving my things to my new apartment. It was small but clean, with simple furniture and a view of a small park. My savings, the money that I had been saving for our common future, have now become my freedom fund. That evening, I went to my parents' house for their usual Sunday dinner. I knew Leon and Sarah would be there. They always came after the weekend spent with her parents. When I came in, Mom was just setting the table, Dad was sitting in his chair, and Leon and Sarah were sitting on the couch, looking like the perfect couple. "That's my girl," Mom smiled. "We missed you at lunch yesterday." "Yes, about that." I looked directly at Leon. "How was your weekend, Leon? How does it feel to cover up Mauricio's affair?" There was a dead silence in the room. Leon's face paled. "What are you talking about?" my father asked sharply. I took out my phone and before anyone could stop me, I started reading the messages out loud. Jokes. Trips to strip clubs. Careful coordination of their lies. With each word, Sarah's face became more terrifying. When I finished, she slowly turned to Leon, her eyes filled with tears. Leon was silent. He didn't even try to justify himself. "Sarah, please." The sound of her palm hitting his cheek resounded through the room. "We're done," she breathed, barely able to contain the tremor in her voice. She grabbed her purse and ran out of the house, slamming the door. I expected my parents to be shocked, furious, disappointed in Leon. But instead, Mom burst into tears. Not because of me. It's because of him. Look what you've done. She screamed, rushing to comfort Leon, who was sitting with his head in his hands. Your brother's relationship is ruined. I stared at her in disbelief. Are you serious? Did you hear anything I just said? Oh, Federica, the father sighed heavily, shaking his head. Boys will be boys. You're making a big deal out of a molehill. Maurizio was just blowing off steam, his father continued, shrugging his shoulders. And Leon was a good friend. A good friend? I repeated, feeling the lump in my throat getting bigger. I found myself in some kind of strange parallel universe. He helped my husband cheat on me. He lied to my face for months. Mom sat up abruptly. And now you've ruined his relationship with Sarah. I almost laughed. Did I ruin it? Was it really necessary? What is it? She asked, crossing her arms. Couldn't you handle this privately? Leon raised his head, his eyes were red but dry. Yes, little sister, he said hoarsely. It was really a cool move. You just had to drag everyone into it, didn't you? I looked between them. My mother stroked Leon's hair as if he were a wounded child. My father gave me the disappointed look he'd been honing for years. Leon, with red but dry eyes, played his role of victim, as he had done all his life. At that moment, something inside me broke. Or, on the contrary, it has formed, hard and cold, like a stone. You know, I took a deep breath. You're right. I should have known better. Do I expect any of you to take my side? Stupidly. I looked directly at Leon. You've always been the golden child, haven't you? He always got away with it. I could always know that I was wrong, and it didn't change anything. I turned to my parents. Congratulations. You can have each other. I left the house that night. And she didn't look back. The divorce process was surprisingly quick. Maurizio tried to claim that half of my savings were marital property. We'd been saving up together, he said to the intermediary, carefully pretending to be a reasonable man. It was our joint plan for the future. But even his parents, who tried to stay away from all this, could not stand it. Don't make yourself look even worse than you already are, his mother said sharply. The next day, he withdrew his application. I've heard from mutual friends that Leon and Maurizio are still inseparable. Without Sarah to hold Leon back, he completely immersed himself in the bachelor life. They became regulars at every bar and club in town, living like college freshmen instead of grown men in their 30s. Their social media was full of photos of parties with girls, drunken adventures, and expensive entertainment. It's not like I've looked in often. But the rumors still reached me. It's funny how clarity comes and you throw off an unnecessary burden. Without the failed marriage and family drama, I could finally focus on what I really wanted. And I wanted success. I took on every difficult project that other managers tried to avoid. Too risky. I'll take it. Is it too time-consuming? Give me. I was the first to arrive at the office and the last to leave. She put every drop of her energy into her work. My first major success came with the Gentile account, a client that everyone thought was impossible. I completely restructured their trading system, implemented new reporting mechanisms, and increased their profitability by 47% in the first quarter. The CEO himself called me personally to thank me. This led to even bigger projects. I have developed a new risk assessment system that has saved the company millions of dollars. Optimized international trading processes, reducing transaction time by 60%. One victory led to another. People started to notice. Federica, my boss, called me one morning. I went into his office. We want you to join the top management team, he said, folding his hands on the table. We need someone with your vision. The promotion came with a corner office and a salary that took my breath away for a moment. I celebrated by buying myself a black Mercedes. Not the most practical choice, but I wanted something that reminded me every day how far I had come. 6 months later, I closed the deal to buy the apartment of my dreams. One-bedroom apartment in the most desirable area of the city. The mortgage payments were high, but I could afford it. Every evening I stood on the balcony, looking at the lights of the city, proud of the fact that she built everything herself. I haven't talked to my family all this time. No birthday calls. No festive meetings. No Sunday dinners. Sometimes I saw their numbers on the phone screen, but she never answered. The wounds were still too fresh. And then, on a random Tuesday evening, when I was looking through the quarterly reports in my home office, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and only a few people knew my new address. I looked at the security camera screen, and I saw my parents. They looked older and tired. Much older than I remembered them. For a moment, I thought about not opening it. Just ignore the call, pretend that I'm not at home. But something in their posture, in the way my mother nervously jangled her fingers, in the way my father's shoulders slumped, made me press the intercom button. "Federica," Mom started talking even before I really opened the door. "You look wonderful." I crossed my arms, tilting my head a little to one side. "What do you need?" My voice was cold and professional, the same tone I used in difficult negotiations with clients. They exchanged glances. "It's about Leon," my father said. I didn't answer, just looked at them, waiting for them to continue. "We were wrong about him," Mom lowered her gaze. I leaned against the door frame, silently giving them a chance to continue. They told me how Leon finally went downhill after Sarah dumped him. How his friendship with Maurizio became toxic. Endless parties, drinking, hookups with random women. How he started coming to work with a hangover. And then drunk. 2 official warnings, Mom said softly, her voice trembling. One thing is that he was drunk at his desk. Another is for not showing up for an important meeting with a client. She looked up at me. "He was fired, Federica." I felt a slight pressure in my chest, but I quickly pushed the feeling away. "His recommendations are terrible," Mom continued. "No one wants to hire him. He lives in his old room. Now he has no money, no prospects." I let the silence hang between us. Then she asked calmly, "What exactly do you expect from me in this regard?" I walked deeper into the apartment, leaning against the kitchen counter. The cold marble pleasantly cooled my palms. A small luxury that I chose for myself when I was making repairs. Mom's eyes lit up with hope. "Well, honey," she began cautiously. "We know that you are now in management, in such a prestigious company. We thought," my father picked up, "maybe you could find a position for him. Something suitable. With a good salary. It shouldn't be too complicated," Mom added hastily. Laughter escaped my lips before I could contain it. "Let me get this straight," I said, straightening up. "Do you want me to risk my professional reputation, which I built from scratch, to give a warm place to the brother who betrayed me?" Mom pressed her lips together. "Federica. The same brother who helped destroy my marriage. That was 2 years ago," she said pleadingly. "People make mistakes." I nodded slowly. "Mistakes?" I crossed my arms, and my voice turned icy. "A mistake can be called forgetting to buy milk. Being late for an appointment." I looked at them intently. What Leon did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. They were silent. "And not just one choice, but many," I continued. "He chose to cover for Mauricio's infidelities. He chose to laugh at me behind my back. He chose friendship with my ex-husband over family. He's your brother, my father said harshly. The family forgives, Mom added. I laughed. Really? Where was that family loyalty when I needed it? I took a step closer. When I showed you the evidence of what they did to me, you chose him. Mom swallowed. And then I tilted my head slightly, squinting. Have you remembered that he is unreasonable? That he ruined his life? And now that he's desperate, do you come to me? Mom tensed up. If you don't help your brother, she said suddenly, coldly, we will disinherit you. My father nodded. Everything will go to Leon. I stared at them for a few seconds, then slowly looked around my apartment. The paintings that I chose myself. The furniture I bought with my own money. The life I built without their help. A genuine laugh escaped my lips. I don't need anything from you. I took a step towards the door, throwing it wide open. I think it's time for you to leave. Federica, my mother began. I didn't answer. I just stood there, holding the door open. Finally, they left. Mom was crying. The father muttered something about ungrateful daughters. I closed the door and felt something heavy fall off my shoulders. I went to the window and watched them get into their old Volvo, the same car they'd had since I was in college. I thought about Leon. About him lying in his childhood bedroom, probably with another hangover, waiting for someone to solve his problems again. As they had done all his life. The last I heard, he was working part-time in the neighborhood, mowing lawns, painting fences, grabbing any job to scrape together money for drinks. Maurizio eventually got tired of partying with his poor friend and moved out. Karma, as they say, is a patient guest. I was pouring myself a glass of wine, an expensive Bordeaux that I bought to celebrate my latest successful project. And she went out onto the balcony. The city stretches out in front of me. The lights twinkled like fallen stars. My Mercedes was parked in the parking space reserved for me. A symbol of everything I've achieved on my own. Some might call me cold for turning my back on my family. But family is not just about blood. This is trust. Respect. Loyalty. Those who really love you don't betray you. They don't manipulate you. They're nearby. They support you. And they celebrate your successes. Write a comment on what you think about this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.